Hi, it's Corey Sievers here from the Savvy team. Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. So in this particular session, this particular episode of Healthy, Wealthy, Wise, we're going to be talking about universal health truths that even the experts can agree upon. And so we'll also delve into some of the insights there, and maybe we'll push the boundaries of what everyone can agree upon and start to look at, some of what research is uncovering so that we can make the right decisions moving forward with our own health and well-being. You can join us on the journey. So in Wealthy and Wise, we'll be talking about change your questions, change your life. So when we look at how we have developed, when we were growing up and everything, it's, by the age of about 14, most of us have actually developed a bit of an inferiority complex. We've not developed the best questions that we ask ourselves. And so we're actually going to delve into that and look at how we can change those questions, change our mental mindset so that we really can change our future and change the trajectory of our life. So congratulations for being with us here on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. If you're new to what we do here in the Savvy team, we're all about helping you reach a higher level of health and wellness. And we would love to hear your thoughts as we go through the show. As I said, we're dealing with these universal health truths that experts agree upon. And so if you have any questions as we go through comments, then please do let us know. And definitely if you're joining the live show, give me a wave so I can see that you're here. But ask questions, comment upon these things. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you happen to be catching this on YouTube or catching this on the audio version of the podcast, then also reach out to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and make any comments there and we can follow up with you. So look, as I said, if you are new to what we do here in the Savvy Team Wellness community, we're all about helping you enjoy improved health and lifestyle. And we're really putting together a holistic wellness and disease prevention infrastructure support system, really. And so when you connect in with our community, you'll have access to our step-by-step action plans, innovative solutions, and all the guidance and support that you need to reach your wellness goals and really live life to the full. Here are just some of our wellness action plans here, everything from the 10 years younger challenge through to our detox protocol. So, there's something that can guide you along the way to achieving your wellness goals. And, we're here to educate you and inspire you really to understand what can be done. And the exciting thing is, many times we actually feel in our wellness journey that we're somewhat alone, and yet when you connect in with the Savvy team, you'll have a wellness guide and you'll really be on the journey with people around you to help and inspire you to keep going. Because what we're all about here is not just preventing illness and not getting sick, but we actually want to help you reach high level wellness. And that's more than just focusing on the minimum daily requirements of nutrients. It's more than just looking at signs and symptoms. It's actually looking to correct some of the root causes of disease so that you can live a long, healthy, and productive and fun life, right? If you're up for that journey, then I think you're in the right place here with us in the Savvy team. So look, before we get underway with these topics, it's important to realize that the information that I'll be sharing reflects my personal research and experience and is for educational purposes only, so should not be seen or taken as medical advice or any comments as therapeutic claims. So the information is general in nature, and so all of your individual health concerns have obviously not been taken into account, so any comments and experiences should not be interpreted as therapeutic claims. If you have any question as to the appropriateness of the information with regards to your own personal well-being, then please discuss this with your healthcare provider. That being said, we encourage you to take self-responsibility for your own well-being and learn more on this topic and on complementary medicine in general. And the reason that is so important is that there's no one that's more connected and cares more about your health than you. So no, it's nice to have support. It's nice to have guidance along the way. It's nice to have somebody that can do tests and advise us and everything. But no doctor will ever be as concerned about your health as you. And so self-responsibility is at the core of true healing and regeneration. So sure, someone else can sort of take care of your sickness, but no one else will truly help you reach high-level wellness. So you know, that's where it's about taking control, and not in a controlling sort of way, but self-responsibility, and realizing that if it's going to be, it's up to me. And also, the great thing about what we offer here is a community around you to support you on your journey. It's always nice to have a cheer squad. So yeah, look, if you want to improve something about your health and wellness, then we can definitely guide you there. And as I said, this particular show, if you've just joined us, give us a wave. We would love to know that you are joining us here on the live show. And of course, reach out, make comments if you happen to be catching this on YouTube or on the podcast version or somewhere else on the blog or whatever. Love to hear your thoughts. So universal health truths that experts agree upon is what we're going to be dealing with in the main session. And in, sort of in alignment with that, I'd like to cover some fun facts around that. So really deal with a little bit of fun facts in terms of nutrition, really. And so I think that this will be important for you to be aware, and it sort of lines up with the health truths, because these are truths, these are facts. And so, you've probably heard things such as, for your well-being, there's some essential nutrients that the body needs, right? So your body, the essential nutrients are things that your body cannot synthesize. It cannot manufacture them internally. They must be provided in the diet. So let's look at the micronutrients. So if you followed our material at all, you know that we're very focused on micronutrient density. So this is the things like minerals and vitamins and polyphenols and antioxidants and all of that are in nutrients, that these are more important in a lot of cases than the macronutrients, the fats, carbs, and proteins. So, the reason that we want to eat a rich and varied diet is because of the vitamins and the minerals and all of these sorts of things. So it's not just the fats, proteins, and carbs that keep us alive. So minerals are important for your body to stay healthy and for you to function properly. Your minerals, the minerals in the body provide many different roles. They keep your bones healthy, your muscles and your heart and your brain working properly. Minerals are important for actually making enzymes and hormones within the body. And so, there are two basic classes of minerals. We have the macro minerals, the ones that we need a lot more of, and we have the trace minerals that only small amounts are needed, but those small amounts make all the difference. So the macro minerals, you've probably heard of them, things like calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, potassium, sulfur. But then there's the trace minerals, and you only need just a little bit of these, but people can still become deficient. And these are iron, manganese, copper, iodine, zinc, cobalt, yes, even fluoride in its natural form, and selenium. So these minerals are something that your body cannot synthesize. So it must be in the diet. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of depletion in soils from modern farming techniques and all that sort of thing. And that's why for more than 25 years, here in this wellness community, we've recommended an ionic trace mineral supplement as the cornerstone of Wellness Daily, because it just doesn't make any logical sense to be deficient in some of these trace minerals when it's so easy to supplement. Okay, so we need trace minerals. These are essential. Then we move on to vitamins. Now, there are 13 essential vitamins that must come from your diet that cannot be synthesized in the body. So, this is where in history we saw these deficiency diseases develop, and once upon a time they thought many of these diseases were infectious. As the germ theory was developing, they used to think that many diseases were infectious or caused by negative spirits, even in the medical profession, or caused by a toxin. And then they learned that it was deficiency. So, sometimes medicine can be very focused on genetics, as it sort of is today. And so realize that in history, for example, just take scurvy as an example. They believed for hundreds of years that it was genetic. So the medical professionals at the time refused to believe that it was a vitamin deficiency. And so it became well known then that it was simply a vitamin C deficiency. And so what they would do, and this is an interesting thing when we talk about supplementing a diet. Many people sort of say supplements are worthless, all you need is a balanced diet. Well, that depends on what your balanced diet really is. So the sailors would go to sea and they were eating a typical sailor's diet, but 50% of people would die on the journey. So, because they didn't have fresh foods with them, they would be eating grains and sugar and preserved meats and all that sort of thing. And so they were on almost like the typical Western diet today of packaged foods for many people, packaged and processed foods. So scurvy developed. So in this day and age with fortified foods, and I'll talk about this a little bit later too, we don't see those true serious deadly deficiency diseases. It's picked up in our system a bit before it becomes like that usually. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean that we've been functioning at our optimal all this time. So there are 13 different essential vitamins. They must come from your diet or through supplementation. So there's some of the micronutrients that we might talk about. Let's move on to the macronutrients. Now, do you know what macronutrients are? They're things like fats, proteins, carbohydrates. They're our macronutrients, okay? So think about this. I want you to really think through here. An essential amino acid is an amino acid that cannot be synthesized by the body. There are 21 amino acids. 9 of them are considered essential for humans. There are others that are considered conditionally essential, but there are 9 essential amino acids. So where do we get our essential amino acids from? Where do we get amino acids from? From protein, foods, and supplements. So from protein. So protein, we could say, is an essential macronutrient because we will derive, through our diet, we'll derive these essential amino acids from the breakdown of protein foods. Okay? So let's move to essential fatty acids. There are essential fatty acids that we must get in our diet or through supplementation as the body requires them for good health, and we cannot synthesize them in the body. They must be in our diet. So when we look at that, there are a couple of different essential fatty acids. There's an omega-3 fatty acid, omega-6 fatty acid. So alpha-linoleic acid and linoleic acid are really the two essential fatty acids that our body needs. And there are some other conditionally essential ones that we've heard of, like DHA and all that sort of thing. So docosahexaenoic acid and gamma-linoleic acid. So we've heard about omega-3 and omega-6, and so these are needed in our diet. So tell me, where do we get essential fatty acids from? We get them from fats in our diet and supplements. So fat is therefore an essential macronutrient that needs to be in the diet. So we know that we have to have minerals in the diet. We need to have vitamins in the diet. We need to have amino acids in the diet from protein, and we need to have essential fatty acids from fats. So that leads us to the last macronutrient of carbohydrates. Now, the medical literature states that the lower limit, the lowest you can go and stay healthy with carbohydrates is 0, provided you have an adequate amount of protein and carbohydrates, right? So therefore, your body is well equipped to function well on 0 carbohydrates. So in other words, fats are essential, proteins are essential, carbohydrates are not essential for health and well-being, according to the evolutionary biology, according to the way our body functions. Because we can manufacture glucose. You may have heard some people say carbohydrates are essential for the brain. Yeah, but the body can actually manufacture carbohydrates and go through processes to manufacture what the brain needs and what the rest of the body might need internally. So it's therefore not essential in our diet. So when we look at the modern diseases that are developing, would it possibly be because we are hammering so many carbohydrates into a system that can do very well without any? So the only macronutrient that we need 0 of is actually carbohydrates. So we can't do without minerals, we can't do without vitamins, we can't do without essential amino acids, we can't do without essential fatty acids, but we can do without carbohydrates. And that is a lesson in and of itself. So we can really understand that, there's a lot of misinformation spread out there around about the you know, how much carbohydrates we need and all of this sort of thing. So, you know, we're not going to be dealing with the things that are necessarily controversial. I want to really look at the universal health truths that the experts can really agree upon. And when we get into dietary philosophy, it can become a little bit complicated. So if you've seen us talk about things such as the Eat Savvy diet, you've heard me go through this before, but what's the right diet? How do we find the right diet that we can all agree on? Because the Japanese, they eat very little fat and suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us, whereas Mexicans eat a lot of fat and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. Well, the Chinese drink very little red wine and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. The Italians drink excessive amounts of red wine, comparatively, and suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. The Eskimos eat more fat than anyone else and suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. And the French, well, we could say that they eat more fat than us, drink excessive amounts of red wine, and even they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than those in Australia, America, and Great Britain. So the possible conclusion that we could come to is eat and drink what you like because it must be speaking English that's the problem. So obviously that's the dichotomy, the paradox that we go on in the world today about what the right diet is. And that leads us to what experts can agree upon and what we certainly assert here in the Savvy team. And so the first universal health truth that I would like to give to you is that there is no single diet that is perfect for everyone. There's no single diet that is perfect for everyone. We're all unique. We all have subtle differences in genetics, in body type, in physical activity, in environment, and so therefore it changes the diet that we should follow. So what we assert and suggest for you here, with what we do in the Savvy team, is to follow what we call our Eat Savvy approach, and then adapt that to your personal physiology and your unique differences. So some people do well on a low-carb, ketogenic style diet, while others do better, including some of the richer whole food carbohydrate sources in their diet. But again, we don't need those things. People can do very well depending on their energy balance and what they're doing, for example. So to figure out what's best for you, a little bit of experimentation over time is needed. So some experts suggest expensive testing such as genetic testing, nutrigenomics, and while we agree that that is excellent if you can afford the barrage of tests, it's sort of not where most people are at. So what we find gets great results is you begin by following the Eat Savvy approach, which helps you avoid some of the most common food problems, inflammatory and allergenic, and the foods that people are intolerant to, the foods that are lowest in nutrient value, yet highest in inflammatory, potentially toxic byproducts, for example. And also avoid what you know that you're intolerant to. And then a simple way to tweak the Eat Savvy approach to your unique physiology is to move towards what we call the blood group diet. Whoops. So, sorry, there we go. So, because we're all different, we want to, basically, if you start with the Eat Savvy approach and then tweak it with if you've heard of the blood type diet. Okay, because what we've found over time is that that's a simple way to tweak it to your own physiology and history. So if you haven't done a full barrage of genetic testing, you might hear on the internet done a lot over by organizations in the US where the prices come down significantly. We don't have the same access to cheap testing here in this region of the world compared to there. But if you're up for that, then that will show you your unique prevalence for certain diseases, your unique history and all that sort of thing. So what we've found is the simplest way for you to know your unique differences is to look to your blood type. Okay, and so this and then follow the work of people such as Dr. Peter D'Adamo with his blood typing diet. So we have simply found, because he's done a lot of work on that, even following on from his father, Dr. James D'Adamo, And so, this allows you to adjust and tweak things. So, when we look at, let us just look a little bit at the actual Eat Savvy diet. And it's a pretty simple philosophy looking at what that's all about. It's, that there are some foods and ways of eating and emotional ways of eating too that are not savvy. And then there are some foods that are, if we ask the experts and what the experts agree upon, that there are some things that are savvy. What we've done with the Eat Savvy approach is this: all of the experts may not agree on this, but what we've done is we've put it all together and it really put the research of many people at the forefront of nutritional science into a simple sliding scale. And so we know what experts can agree upon is that you're not just sick one day, or healthy. You're not just healthy one day and suddenly sick. It is a degenerative process. It's a sliding scale. So what we assert is let's let our diet and lifestyle sort of foster moving towards that higher level of wellness. So it's very, very simple. And what we're doing over time is decreasing man-made and natural toxins, whilst at the same time increasing micronutrient value in the foods and through supplementation. So it's really a very simple sliding scale approach that can really help you to boost energy, improve your mental clarity, detox your body, shed excess weight, get rid of those allergies, and even improve your skin health and more. And so you can download the actual cheat sheet from our blog, and we also have 12 steps to help you get started on the Eat Savvy diet. So what's this blood type bit that we were talking about? I'd just like to go through this little bit of information about blood type, because if you've not come across the differences in blood type, this could be a real eye-opener for you. So if you've tried different diets and perhaps you've wondered why your friend did really well and said, I'm doing this latest diet and I've done really well, you should do it too. And you've tried it and you've realized, well, you didn't do very well on it. So this could give you some insight. And the great thing, the reason that we use the blood type as a way of tweaking the Eat Savvy approach is because it's basically easy to get. Your doctor, you might already know your blood type. Your doctor could tell you your blood type. You could get a test from your doctor, or you could go and give blood in this region of the world, in many Western cultures too. If you give blood, which is free, they can tell you your blood type because that's what they're looking for. So it's easy to find out your blood type, and then you know how to tweak. So sure, you can go and have all of the genetic testing and nutrigenomic testing and a barrage of blood tests and functional medical tests, granted. But how simple is it to follow the Eat Savvy approach, avoid all of the allergens and the typical ones that we've put together from multiple areas of research, and then tweak it by knowing your blood type. See how you feel. Follow a bit of a supplemental approach to bolster up the nutrients, cut the chemicals, see how you feel. Chances are you'll start to do really, really well, and you won't even need all the barrage of testing. So anyway, so if you want information around blood type, the foods to avoid based on your blood type, obviously you can read the full book and access things there, but we actually have downloads. We have cheat sheets on exactly what to eat for your blood type. So just reach out to us and we can give you the blood type sheet that you can match up with the Eat Savvy approach. And that's all free, so feel free to reach out to us. So when we're dealing with blood types here in Australia, so obviously it's, depending on immigration and cultural differences in different countries, obviously it's going to change. But we're dealing here with Australia, mostly Australia, New Zealand, are all very similar. In fact, in many other Western cultures, it's very, very similar, but it certainly can change in percentages can change. But in Australia, 49% of people are what's called type O. 38% of people are type A. 10% of people are type B, and then there's AB of 3%. Okay, so in other words, most of us are an O type. So let's take a look at the information about these different blood types and some of the things that can like just an example here of 5 beneficial and avoid foods for combating inflammation. So if you're looking at inflammation being one of the drivers of many diseases today, we want to reduce the inflammation. Now, reducing inflammation differs for each blood type. So to give you an example here, I'm not having a go here about I I initially, back when I came across this concept in the early 90s, I was a vegetarian. And I'd been trained in the benefits of that for cleansing and all that sort of thing. I did eat a little bit of fish. I did eat some eggs, but very little dairy at the time. So I wasn't a vegan, but for times I was a vegan, but mostly just vegetarian. We could say it's pescatarian if I included fish, for example. So I did not function well. I did it for 10 years. I gave it a good go. And I suffered blood sugar problems, inflammation, all sorts of challenges went on, frequent illness. I just didn't do very well. Tiredness. I then ended up suffering from adrenal burnout, all these sorts of things. So I gave it a good go. And I did it for health reasons. So according to the research, health and humane reasons and everything. And so little did I know that I was an O blood type, meaning that my system functions better on heavy, nutrient-dense proteins and fats. So I gave it a good go, and in 2005, I gave up vegetarianism and moved towards eating meat. And it was a change. It was a change for me. But now as a result, I'm on top of my blood sugar imbalances. My inflammation has reduced considerably. I've been able to maintain a healthier weight much more easily because I've eliminated the foods and eaten more of the foods that do well with my own physiology. And I haven't had all of the genetic testing. So I don't really know all of that testing from where I came from. But using the blood type diet, I was able to tweak things and get back on track. So that's what we're really suggesting for you. It's a very simple, inexpensive way to learn how to change your lifestyle. So the O type is for old. It's the original hunter-gatherer type. So in other words, us O types are adapted to being meat eaters. We function well on high protein diets. So you can see some of the beneficial foods here. So beneficial foods for reducing inflammation are things such as seaweed, red meat, oily cold water fish, spinach, and kale. So, again, you don't see any high carbs there. So things to avoid are the wheat, corn, kidney beans, navy beans, white potatoes, for example, because they'll trigger inflammation. But you also notice for O types, carbohydrates don't feature high. An O type will do better if they lower their carb intake. So then we look at type A. Type A is for agrarian or agriculture, so adapted to agriculture. Now type A's are the first vegetarians. So remember what we dealt with. This is 38% of the population. So if you're a type A, you'll do well as a vegetarian, especially if you include still some fish, maybe eggs, although eggs can be allergenic for many people, maybe even some dairy, okay? But certainly you can do very well with fish and many of the other vegetarian foods, okay? And so type A's don't do so well with their heavy fatty meats. So let's look at what is great here. So cultured soy products. And so soy is not good generally. And by the way, GMO soy is loaded with the glyphosate pesticide. So you want to avoid any of the typical soy products, soy milk, tofu, all that sort of thing. But cultured soy is very good for a type A. Pineapple, olive oil, onions, broccoli are all great for reducing inflammation in a type A. So a type A, if they're wanting to reduce inflammation, would avoid red meat, milk, lima beans, white potatoes, and oranges. But we're seeing potatoes come up. Potatoes are very inflammatory. So both type O's and type A's can reach for some sweet potatoes, though, I believe. So So, again, we just don't, again, reach for the Eat Savvy diet. If you follow the Eat Savvy approach and tweak it for your blood type, what we've seen with our community is you'll actually do very well. So, type B is for balanced, really flexible dietary choices, and type Bs do well with dairy. Okay, so a type B could beneficial foods are red meat, broccoli, the cultured dairy products like like yogurts and all that sort of thing, onions, pineapple. But you'll want to avoid chicken, corn, peanuts, lentils, buckwheat. Okay, for example, because these are the things that will either reduce inflammation or increase inflammation. Okay, so then we have the top 5 beneficial. So type AB is a modern merging. And so remember that AB is only 3% of the population. So it's a somewhat of a modern merging of A and B types. And so it's a bit of an evolutionary mystery, really. But again, they do well with a mixed diet. So looking at the foods to partake of and enjoy or avoid. 5 top beneficial foods for a type AB: tofu, cultured dairy products, broccoli, walnuts, cauliflower. But you want to avoid the chicken, corn, buckwheat, lima beans, and kidney beans. Okay, and so this is all, as I said, based on the work of Dr. D'Adamo. And so what we can do here is we as I said, we just basically follow the Eat Savvy approach. You start there, you eliminate the main allergens, then you move towards tweaking with the downloads that you can access from us. Right now you'll have to reach out to us to access them. So just feel free to message us or whatever, email us or message us on Facebook, and we'll make sure that you get the one for your type. And what we do there, one inexpensive way that we can tweak things for you is to look at our bioinfluence report hair analysis. And so this gives you a bit of a glimpse into the changes that are going on for you now, what your epigenetic nature is really calling out for. So let me give you a glimpse into that. It's so much less expensive than genetic testing or nutrigenomic testing. So, I mean, admittedly, the nutrigenomics and the genetic testing show real triggers for your biology, but this gives you a bit of a glimpse over a period of time. So you can discover what's affecting your current state of well-being with what we call our nutritional and environmental bioinfluence report. So every day your body is hit with bioinfluences, influences on your biology. So if we reduce the negative ones and increase the positive ones, your body starts to do well. So here, when you get a report, you find that there are certain systems that are under load, so to speak. So we can see with this particular person, their detoxification system, their immune system, both under load, and they're not getting restorative sleep. So then we can really understand that that's what's going on for you epigenetically, and we can make some tweaks based on that. But then you might notice the food restriction summary. Now, this is not allergy, it's not related to your blood type, and it's not the same as what will show up on the Eat Savvy approach, but it shows up with some unique things that might be a problem for you right now, because this is looking at the last 3 months of what's going on in your body. Because what we do with this is we actually take a hair sample that has the root, like has the actual bulb on there, and that contains a lot of basic biomarkers, a lot of energetic biomarkers that we can analyze to see what's been going on for your body in the last few months. And so these are all based on very, very specifically for now. So the great thing about it is the O-type diet, or the blood type diet, whether you're O, A, etc., that sort of is to do with your history and your genetics. When we look at the Eat Savvy diet, that's avoiding the things that are generalizations for inflammation and problems for people. When we do the hair test, it's what's very specific for you right now, the things that your body's not coping with right now over the last few months. And so it's if you avoid them, we have found that when people avoid them, that they actually bounce back even without changes in their program much of the time, because there was something about these foods that were upsetting the body, even just on a very minor energetic level. So that's the food avoidances. And then, of course, we have supplement priorities and all that sort of thing. So I really wanted to point out this, that sometimes it doesn't make logical sense, but you can notice a big difference with rebalancing your body. So, for example, I'm an O type, and right now it came up on my latest report to avoid beef. So that's a bit of an interesting one, but for whatever reason, I haven't had other blood tests to identify whether maybe there's too much iron building up in my system or anything, but I'm following the protocol suggested here to see how I go. So we have seen many things match up with blood testing and with the hair analysis testing. So it's a lot more, less invasive and up to the minute, so to speak. So again, you can work with both, but just wanted to show you that because it's very interesting. It's an interesting way of tweaking, and then you find out the exact things that are relevant for you. So if you have any questions regarding that, then of course, please do reach out to us. All right. So the next one that we're going to be talking about here, as far as a universal truth that even all of the experts can agree upon, is that whole foods are healthier than processed foods. Okay, we can get agreement on that. There's lots of disagreements in nutritional science, but we can get agreement from pretty much everybody that whole foods are better than processed foods. And so, as the food systems become more industrialized, the general health of the population has deteriorated. So during food production and food processing, much of the nutrients can be removed or damaged. And so not only do food producers remove, or even intentionally or accidentally, all of the healthy nutrients, like, for example, fiber, and but they also add in some of the damaging things that we'll go through very, very shortly, sugar and trans fats. As well, for preserving and coloring and all that sort of thing, they load all sorts of other artificial chemicals in there that have a questionable safety profile. So basically, processed foods, we really know it if we think about it, are not, have less of the good stuff and more of the bad stuff. Pretty simple. And so experts certainly can agree upon that. What some people don't agree upon that is what we mean by processed. So, for example, if you just, the science has shown with blood sugar imbalances and everything, if you just take, let's say that you are eating grains. If you take the grain and you grind it up to flour and then produce something out of it, it has a much higher glycemic load, a much higher insulin response, so it hits your system much heavier than a whole, like let's say, like if you grind up and use oat flour, it's going to have a much faster impact on your system than having oatmeal, for example. So having oats that have been cooked overnight, for example, whole oats. We're not recommending these heavy grains unless you tolerate them okay and you're not struggling with obesity and diabetes and all that sort of thing. But it's just to understand that the challenge is even a healthy food, if it's ground up, like let's look at sweet potatoes, for example. Sweet potatoes are a healthy food. Certainly shows up on the, we put it on the Eat Savvy diet. It's a healthy food, even for O types and all that sort of thing. But we're now starting to see sweet potato flour in the supermarket. Now, grinding it up like that and then having it has a different load on the body. It's the same raw ingredients, but the actual processing, grinding, and etc. creates a higher insulin response and glycemic load. And so can cause you to have more trouble losing weight and cause you to have more inflammation in the system, for example. So look, if you have any questions as we're going through with this, then please do ask. So if you have just joined us here on the Healthy Wealthy Wise Show, Corey Sievers here, and we're talking about the foods, the universal health truths that experts can agree upon. And later on, we'll be dealing with change your questions, change your life. But we've just been dealing here mostly with foods, and obviously experts certainly can agree upon real food makes all the difference. And one researcher that really looked at this was the Pottinger, say Pottinger's cats, and one particular question that he was looking at was what happened when animals were fed processed foods, and what's interesting is that look, we might get all upset about animal testing and everything. What happened here is that he was an original endocrinologist, really looking at the adrenal and testing different things, and so people started people heard that he had cats and that he looked after a lot of cats and did things with cats. So people started to dump their cats at the facility. And so he thought, well, what do I do? And so he gave them a good life by doing some testing rather than just having them put down. And one of the things that he found with the research is that those fed a whole food, raw diet for cats lived longer, had healthier offspring. Those that were fed processed foods laden with sugar and cooked actually degenerated and had degeneration in subsequent generations as well. So it's pretty obvious. The less processed food that we can consume, the better, and experts certainly agree. All right, so now let's have a look at the next one. Added sugar is a disaster. The experts certainly agree that added sugar into our diet is a disaster. So this is when we sweeten things, when we put added sugar into foods, that this is an absolute disaster. And the biggest problem is the fact that there is added sugar in many of the foods that you don't think of as sweet. So, we're not talking about just having sugar in a food, like having a sweet. But there's sugar in things, added sugar in things that you don't even think of, even in bread, in cereals, in hamburger bun, in even meats and processed meats, in sauces, in mayonnaise, in these sorts of things that you think of as savory, but they've been loaded up with added sugar. And so you're getting much more sugar than you even realize. And so, obviously they're doing that to improve the taste and palatability and the fact that you buy more of this stuff. It's the processed food industry. So it could be table sugar, it could be high fructose corn syrup, but everyone really, all of the experts agree that we are eating far too much sugar. And it's not just that it's empty calories. So certainly this sugar is empty calories. So there's calories with no added benefit of nutrients. We already worked out that there's no essential carbohydrate, so there's no need for the sugar. Two, in most of the cases, we're actually consuming empty calories, so it's doing nothing for our micronutrient intake either. And so it's not just the empty calories, but also the risk that the insulin response is putting on our body. So experts are fairly much in agreement with this now, that it's definitely true that that sugar is not helping you in any way, shape, or form. So this is also just the tip of the iceberg. They're now starting to see the long-range impact of sugar on public health. So implicated really in the leading cause of as the leading cause of obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, all that sort of thing. Now, it's the high fructose content of sugar that's also being blamed here. So sugar itself is made up of glucose molecule and fructose. Now the body sort of has a different way of processing glucose compared to fructose. So fructose and eating lots of fruit and all that sort of thing, lots of fruit juices because it's a healthy fruit sugar, all misdirected information because fructose is metabolized differently in the body. It's metabolized strictly in the liver. And so high intakes have now been linked to a non-alcoholic fatty liver. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and insulin resistance, elevated triglycerides, abdominal obesity, and even high cholesterol over time. So it's the sugar that's the problem here. And so people such as Professor Robert Lustig, they're seeing children. He's a pediatric endocrinologist, and he's saying the challenge is we're seeing children with what is the same as an alcoholic's liver. The liver is being damaged over time by too much sugar and fructose. So added sugar, nasty stuff. We really want to avoid it, and not that we're necessarily avoiding all sweets and all of that sort of thing, but we want to dramatically reduce the consumption of sugar and start to read the labels and look for added sugar. So this is not really new news. John Yudkin wrote about this in the 70s in his book Pure, White and Deadly, and Robert Lustig actually revamped the book because he couldn't believe that Yudkin actually found out the same information that Robert Lustig was finding, and yet he found it 30 years before. So here's a bit of a funny cartoon from Randy Glasbergen here. The high-carb diet I put you on 20 years ago, which was recommended at the time, low-fat, high-carb, gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Whoops, indeed. And when we start digging into this, and people such as Gary Taubes, who is a journalist, he's looked at the sugar and wrote a book called The Case Against Sugar, uncovering much of this information. For example, that we're digging through the medical reports and studies and everything, they found that the sugar lobby actually paid out scientists to blur sugar's role in heart disease. Okay, so you have been led astray as to the safety of sugar and the harm of fat. And that is now documented, scientific, and proven. Okay, you have been led astray. So, don't want to get too heavy on you here, but if you've been following outdated advice, thinking that they're looking after you, then it's just not. It's not factual. So reduce your sugar, you'll do much better. Okay, and experts are starting to really agree on that. All right, let's look at the next universal truth that experts can agree upon, and that is that artificial trans fats are unhealthy. Okay, so trans fats are formed as a side product when vegetable oils are hydrogenated. So, such as margarines, and if you see hydrogenated vegetable oil on a label, or for example, it's going to have trans fats along for the ride. So there are some natural sources of trans fat, but we're not going into that. The biggest problem is the artificial trans fats. There's no evidence to show that the natural ones, the naturally occurring ones, have the same damaging effect as these artificially produced ones that are actually a byproduct of this hydrogenation process. So food producers use this hydrogenated process to create more of a hardened, oils that would usually be liquid at room temperature are now hard and stable. So just margarine is an example of that. So, because trans fats have been linked with poor health, margarine free of trans fats is now starting to become more popular. Not that it's necessarily healthier, because some of these vegetable oils and seed oils are actually still very inflammatory. But definitely experts can agree upon the fact that a high intake of trans fats is associated with chronic disease, abdominal obesity, inflammation, and heart disease, just to name a few. So here in the Savvy team, we recommend that you avoid trans fats like your life depended on it, because in essence, it really does. These are nasty things. So we have pictured here some lovely French fries. Now, one of the interesting things here is that Dr. Kate Shanahan, author of Deep Nutrition, has done research showing that these deep-fried foods can immediately affect the endothelium of the blood vessels. And so, for example, just having a bowl of chips with inflammatory potatoes, especially if they don't suit your blood type, and then the artificial trans fats and inflammatory oils, they trigger an endothelial response and inflammation. So many people actually do, many more people do when they look back at heart attack, people who have suffered a heart attack, they find that they had just before they had, potentially some of these things such as deep fried food. So it actually triggered changes in the actual endothelium. So if you want more information on that, we do have classes on that, like what your doctor may not tell you about preventing heart disease. It covers much of this sort of information about endothelial dysfunction. But definitely avoid the trans fats. All right. If you have any questions, also let us know. Love to hear your thoughts. All right, the next one we have here is refined carbohydrates are bad for you. Experts are now agreeing upon that. And I mentioned it before there, that there's a lot of differing opinions about carbs and fat and which is better for you. Some think fat is the root of all evil, dietary-wise, while others believe that carbs are the key players in obesity and chronic disease. And we're more of carbohydrates are the key players in chronic disease. But we're looking here for what experts can agree upon so that it gives you a really clear direction forward as members of our community or interested guests wanting to optimize your health and well-being. Pretty much everyone does agree on the fact that the refining of the carbohydrates is not so healthy. So not as healthy as unrefined or whole food. So unrefined carbs are basically whole foods that are naturally rich in carbohydrates. So these might be beans, vegetables, fruits, and of course tubers and whole grain cereals and all that sort of thing. But the cereals and the grains are best avoided in our opinion. So the refined carbs, so they're all the whole foods, but refined carbs on the other hand is the sugar and refined flour. And as I mentioned before, just even a grain that might be healthy, or even a tuber, for example, sweet potato, when it might be healthy whole, as soon as you process it, it has a higher glycemic load. So the processing, the refining of the carbohydrate makes it bad for you, makes it less good for you. Even something that's good becomes problematic because of the insulin response and the fact that basically inflames you and makes you fat. So, whole foods contain a whole bunch of beneficial nutrients and antioxidants, whereas when we're dealing with the processed foods, much of the nutrition can be stripped off, etc., and massive amounts of this easily digestible starch, triggering blood sugar imbalance and blood sugar rises. It's not so much the blood sugar, because your body will bring that under control, but a constant barrage of sugar means that your whole insulin response system gets exhausted, and that leads to essentially insulin resistance, which is the precursor for diabetes, and really many experts are saying is the root cause of most of our Western diseases today. So it's these processed, refined carbohydrates. So those who base their diet on refined carbs may also be lacking in fiber, may be lacking in healthy nutrients, and therefore may be at a higher risk of chronic diseases. So definitely experts agree that refined carbs are bad for you. They've even done studies with mice where they've given the same food and simply refined it and give it in like a more refined form versus a whole food form, and seen their obesity change. Same food, same calories. That's the thing. Same food, same calories. It shows that at best the calories in, calories out model is at best, it's not entirely true, but we could even say that it's flawed because there's a biochemical thing that goes on here. And that's also what Dr. Robert Lustig's work is all about, just encouraging people to understand that if you're struggling with blood sugar imbalance, obesity, and all that sort of thing, it's actually not that you're a glutton or a sloth, it's that you're biochemically deranged. I don't mean deranged is messed up, but you can become not so messed up if you follow the right plan. And that's what we're here to guide you along the way to do. So experts agree that this is definitely an issue. All right, so bear with me here. Just checking out some of the comments. Hit us up with any comments. Let us know if you have any questions. All right. Our next one is vegetables are good for you, and most people don't eat enough. Okay, so definitely vegetables are good for you. Now we're starting to see some interesting concepts come through here as well, with the carnivore community getting a little bit of a foothold, shall we say. And much of the information in that again, we assert, depending on your blood type, for example, many people do, many O types do very well avoiding some of the vegetables altogether, especially if you have a lot of intolerances and that sort of thing. So we're actually seeing that much of the community out there, much of the nutrition community are seeing that if people have severe intolerances, the ultimate elimination diet, especially if your blood type matches that, is to eliminate all vegetation and just to eat meat, water, and salt, for example. And a lot of people have actually healed themselves of many of their inflammatory conditions, medically diagnosed inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and all sorts of skin conditions and lupus and all sorts of different autoimmune conditions. So one thing, we can't say that everything is, and we can help you there if you've had some of those sorts of challenges with those sorts of conditions. So definitely reach out to us. Let's do how can we help discovery session and see whether we can point you in the right direction there. And that's a free session, by the way. So vegetables are good for you. Most experts agree that vegetables are good for you, and most people don't eat enough. Okay, so vegetables are rich in all of the vitamins and the minerals, the fiber, the antioxidants, all of the things that we were talking about before. Endless trace minerals, and so observational studies, which are one of the lesser quality studies, show that eating vegetables is associated with improved health and a lower risk of disease. So we certainly do recommend that you get a wide array of vegetables as part of the Eat Savvy approach, and it's a healthy way of sort of optimizing your diet. Again, much of the vegetables then also supply certain resistant starches and fibers that your good gut bugs can ferment and produce nutrition from as well. So generally, vegetables that fit within the Eat Savvy approach and within your blood type are going to be relatively good for you. Okay, so all sorts of different nutrients, and certainly we have seen that research and experts agree that in most cases vegetables are good for you, and most people do not get enough. I'll talk about that a little bit more as part of the last point. Next point, universal truth that experts can agree upon is that getting enough omega-3 fatty acid is important. Okay, so, and most people don't get enough, or their ratios are way out of whack. So omega-3 fatty acids are extremely important for the proper functioning of the body, and we talked about that earlier in the fun facts section, that obviously as we have essential fatty acids that must be obtained from the diet. But if we look at those conditionally essential ones, such as docosahexaenoic acid, which is a omega-3 fatty acid, this makes up about 10 to 20% of the total fat content in the brain. So, our brain is needing this. A low intake of omega-3 is associated with a lower IQ, associated with depression, associated with some mental disorders, associated with heart disease, and other serious diseases. So it's definitely something that we want to get in our diet or through supplementation. So it can come from, here's the thing. So some experts again say, well, we can get it from plant sources, and others say that our ability to convert, like alpha-linoleic acid into these other oils such as EPA and DHA, difficult. So most of the time we're only going to get the EPA and DHA from fatty fish and algae and those sorts of things. So you can get it from algae sources if you are a strict vegan or vegetarian, but most of the time we're getting EPA and DHA from grass-fed meat, eggs, and certainly the oily fish. So, as I said, the plant form of this essential fatty acid, alpha-linoleic acid, needs to be transformed to be able to get in the body to get to DHA and EPA, and that doesn't the change that particular synthesis isn't so efficient in most people. So very inefficient in humans. So best to eat plenty of foods that are high in DHA and EPA. And that's why if you are a vegetarian and so you are a type A, we still really do recommend that if you're not intolerant to eggs, you can include them, but certainly fish. Certainly fish does make a huge difference because you're getting plenty of that. So look, Dr. Weston Price was disappointed that he couldn't find multi-generational healthy people in their natural environment who were totally vegan. He was actually disappointed in that. And so we can't find people. So, again, we have nothing against that. And so if you're doing that for humane reasons, then that's great. Just make sure that it's not damaging your health in the process, and do whatever you can through supplementation to optimize the nutrients. Okay, so when we look at some of these movies that are coming out everywhere, look, people say that the science is great, but actually the science, when you dig into it, has been misrepresented. And so, don't get me started there. But whilst they may have the best intentions, I go back to original work, for example, from Dr. Weston Price and all that sort of thing, where in their natural state, he was unable to find a vegan culture, somebody who survived with healthy, multi-generational wellness, with no dental decay, healthy arches, good development of the brain and the structure of the head, and little disease. He was unable to find a community that didn't include some animal product, and he was disappointed. So we could say that he had a bias towards wanting to find that, but he still was willing to say, I was wrong, basically, because he was studying the deformities of the jaw, the development, and looking at multi-generational. So not just looking at this generation and whether you eliminate all animal products, but it's what happens to subsequent generations. So a bit political there. The experts can't agree on that. So I shouldn't be bringing it up in the universal truths, but but we do know that omega-3, getting enough omega-3, the experts agree that you must get enough omega-3. So apologies for straying away from these universal truths. All right. Another universal truth that experts agree upon, and we agree too, that supplements can't fully overcome the effects of a poor diet. Okay, so no amount of supplements will ever make up for your bad diet. Okay, this is the thing. And it's sort of a trap that you can fall into if you just believe that it's just about the micronutrients or it's just about the macronutrients. You can fall into a trap of it doesn't really matter as long as you're getting everything that you need. But there's this interesting interplay of the way whole foods and natural foods work within the body. Some experts believe it's the microbiome. Some believe it's just the makeup of the nutrients. Some believe there's missing factors that we haven't identified through science yet. But what they can all agree on is that supplements can't fully overcome the effects of a poor diet. So nuts, for example, they're not just shells loaded with polyunsaturated fat. Fruit is not just a watery bag of fructose. It's not just the bad things. There's good and the bad. So real foods have a massive amounts of trace minerals, vitamins, antioxidants, polyphenols, prebiotic fibers, all of these things that we may not be able to get in isolated situations. So supplements can't perfectly match the variety of benefits that we get from real food, and so it cannot overcome the impact of a poor diet. So supplements can't really overcome this impact of a poor diet. and especially with the micronutrient deficiencies. However, many supplements can be beneficial if they're lacking in your diet. And this is the thing, it is silly. I believe it is wrong. What I'm stretching to the universal truths here again. I believe it is wrong when people say that all you need is a balanced diet, because that's so difficult for many people to get in this day and age. So supplementation makes logical sense. So for example, when you get stressed, you're going to need a higher amount of B vitamins to help you deal with the stress. And if you become deficient in B vitamins, you're going to feel more stressed. So if you're under load at the moment and all you need is a balanced diet, supplementation just makes sense. Of course, you can change your diet and include more vitamin B rich foods, but most people don't do that. So then through what life dealt them, they become deficient temporarily and don't bounce back. So, and again, we deal with adaptogenic herbs. What if you could take an adaptogenic herb through supplementation that you just wouldn't get in your diet, that can offset the negative impact of the stress on your body in this short term? Makes logical sense. So we assert that supplementation makes logical sense, but yes, indeed, it's possible if you work really hard at it to get the nutrients that you need from your diet. It's possible. Depends on how hard you want to work, how easy you want to make your life. I don't want to make it that hard. Do you want to make it hard? So anyway, certainly important to eat real nutritious foods. All right, next fundamental or universal truth that experts are agreeing upon is that it's critical to avoid a vitamin D deficiency. Okay, so vitamin D is a unique vitamin that actually functions like a hormone in the body, and the skin makes, as you probably know, makes vitamin D when it's exposed to UVB rays from the sun. However, most people don't get their daily requirement. Okay, most people don't get their daily requirement. So from an evolutionary point of view, this is how most of us would have got our sun. If we were, and from an evolutionary point of view, if you're in the higher regions of the world, so like the higher latitudes, so the colder, darker environment, you tended to get more vitamin D by eating the foods that are rich in vitamin D. You might have eaten fish liver and fatty fish and got vitamin D from that sort of source. Whereas if more from an evolutionary point of view, more equatorial, then you're exposed to more sunshine. So you naturally got a lot of your vitamin D from the sun. So it's in a large part of the world that there's deficiency, even in places such as Australia where we get ample sun. So, and there are some parts of the world that it's simply not available from the sun, and that's where supplementation or optimizing your diet is very, very important. So many people, even where there's enough sun, tend to be inside or use too much sunscreen when they go out. Now, of course, if you're going to be out all day, sunscreen makes logical sense. But if you're going out for 10 minutes for a walk in the garden to water the garden and get outside, it makes logical sense to let the sun get onto your skin. Okay, so let's think sensibly here. We're fearing the sun in much of our cultures, and yet we need sensible sun exposure to optimize our vitamin D level. So if you're deficient in vitamin D, then you're actually, more at risk for serious diseases, including diabetes, cancer, osteoporosis, and even heart disease. So you can have now unfortunately here in this level of this region of the world, your levels can't easily be measured by the doctor because they simply don't believe in it. I talked to a doctor not so long ago, and he said it's a load of whatever. So obviously he was behind the times. So it's not widely recognized as a typical medical test, and it's not usually covered by Medicare, for example, but it's an inexpensive test that you can order. And if you want to know how to do that, there are online systems where we can point you in the right direction as to how to get a simple vitamin D test. And then we use something like the D-Minder app that you can download from either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And that's a free and paid version of the app where you can track your sun exposure and get an estimate moving forward about your vitamin D levels. And then you can really work towards that. But a lot of the experts, like when I've done work, for example, for our participants in the Healthy Heart Challenge and putting together the information that we have around that, like our What Your Doctor Won't Tell You About, may not tell you about preventing heart disease. A lot of the experts are all pointing towards the fact that we need to optimize our vitamin D levels to prevent heart disease and cancer and that sort of thing, and that many people are deficient. So difficult to get enough vitamin D. If you're not getting it in the sun, it's difficult to get it from your diet because we no longer eat the foods that help here. Weston Price saw that people would eat all of those things like the rich butter oils and fermented cod liver oil and these sorts of the brains and the offal of the animals and liver. And all of these nasty bits are eliminated almost entirely from the Western diet. So if people eat meat, they don't eat nose to tail nutrition as far as all of the animal. So we're very wasteful in our modern meat eating society, and that also impacts our health. So more bone broths for the mineral content and the gut healing nutrients, and also maybe some liver and kidney and some heart, all those sorts of things. So good luck with that. But, vitamin D sun lamps are also available, and safe tanning beds are there. So you can get vitamin D supplements, although experts are starting to suggest that, again, they're not as good as the type that you get from the sun or that you get in natural foods. They can deal with your deficiency, but they're not quite as good. All right. Our next universal truth is that dieting has limited results without long-term lifestyle changes. So this frustrates me somewhat in that I see many people out there promoting weight loss programs that simply don't have a natural long-term transitionary approach to wellness. It's just about treating the symptom, overweight, without correcting some of the underlying cause. So short-term dieting has limited results without the long-term health and lifestyle changes. So going on a diet, might help you lose the fat, but when it ends, if you don't have that support and you don't have the knowledge of how to transition, then that's where you end up yo-yoing and putting the weight back on, and that's just pretty common. In fact, we could, if we looked at it from a controversy point of view, we could say that much of the diet industry wants you to put it back on so you come back to them, because otherwise you're never a long-term customer. So look at all the big dietary programs. The only way to have you as a long-term customer is to have you yo-yo, because they don't have transitionary wellness-based approaches. And many of our colleagues only have weight loss programs. They don't really get the holistic wellness philosophy. And yet here in the Savvy Team, if you're connected with all of the action plans and wellness strategies we have to help you achieve your further lifestyle goals, then you've really got it made. That's what our community is really all about. So, but I really believe that most diets out there are just treating the symptoms. They're not addressing the underlying causes, like in most issues today, I guess. And so if you end up just going on a diet, forcing yourself through willpower, as soon as you go back to, less willpower, or you give up on yourself, then you yo-yo back. So to achieve the long-term results, you've got to adopt more of a lifestyle change philosophy. And this is certainly what experts agree upon. Now, if you're looking for support in the area of dietary change and losing some weight, then we have a number of programs that can help you. So our systems are there to help you to burn fat, lose weight, and look your best, but they definitely have a more transitionary focus to move you towards that higher level of wellness. So, we can then help you come up with a plan to take it from your new weight, lock in those results, and then move forward to really take things to the next level as far as your health and well-being. All right, so the next universal truth that experts agree upon is that exercise is important for health and longevity. Now, exercise is one of the most important things that you can do. It not only has been shown to add years to your life, but also increase the number of healthy years. So it can increase your lifespan and what experts are calling your health span as well. So new research examines the relationship between trends of physical activity over time and mortality risk amongst adults in middle age and older. Here's what the findings suggest. They suggest that it's never too late to start exercising because it can really make a difference in your lifespan and your health span. So health span being how well you feel now, and lifespan being how long you last. So one study found that the average 65-year-old male can expect an additional 12.7 years of healthy life, meaning that he will statistically live, the average 65-year male will statistically live disability-free until 77.7. Okay, these are all statistical stuff. However, a highly active 65-year-old male may actually add at least a 5.7 years of healthy life expectancy on top of that. So they will remain disability-free until 83. This is all statistics. So the more active you are, and we assert the more you follow all of the other universal truths that we're talking about here, the more likely you are to live a long and healthy life. Without exercise, scientists agree that you increase your risk of a wide assortment of chronic illnesses. Now, that leads us to the type of exercise. Now, that's widely debated because there are some exercises that people start, like people in older years, they actually start taking up triathlons and marathons, and this is very draining to the body. Jacks up cortisol levels, increases inflammation. So whereas weight training, short, sharp burst training, lots of walking, those sorts of things, any movement really does help to add years to your life and life to your years. So definitely experts agree that there is a list of benefits that physical activity can do for you. Reduction in the risk of coronary heart disease, reduction in heart attack risk, reduction in diabetes, reduction in risk of bone fractures, reduction in the risk of, or reduction in high blood pressure numbers, reduction in obesity, and generally helping you to feel more energetic. Experts agree, time to start an exercise program if you haven't already. Now, this last one here, I'm bringing in a little bit of license here. Supplements make logical sense for optimizing your health. Now, not all experts agree. So I want to reason with you here and have you think about whether experts are just biased, some of the experts, and for you to have a sensible thought about, because it doesn't matter if you might be an outlier and you don't mind going against what all of the supposed experts agree upon. So supplementations, I assert that supplementation makes logical sense for optimizing your health. So let me give you the case for that as such, okay? So supplements are a convenience that help us to live well in our modern world. And if you want good quality health and the prevention of disease, supplements have an important part to play. So this is what I'm asserting. So I'm stretching the universal truths with a bit of political license here. So research on the vitamin, but remember back to what we talked about before, that we need these essential nutrients. So research on vitamins related to major deficiency syndromes began, as I mentioned earlier, when the germ theory of disease was dominant. And basically the scientific dogma said that back then they said only 4 nutritional factors were essential. Proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and minerals is what they believed originally when the germ theory was prevalent through the 1800s and all that sort of thing. But clinicians soon recognized these diseases such as scurvy, beriberi, rickets, pellagra, and they recognized that they were, just through observation, that they were these initial clinicians observing this, they were the outliers going against the traditional dogma, saying, hang on, these appear to be deficiencies not due to infections or toxins. Much of the establishment of the time refused to believe that. But now we know it's fact. So why do we still have an establishment, a medical establishment that refuses to believe that nutritional supplementation can make the world of difference, if historically we've seen that? Now, we could say that okay, back in the day they weren't supplemented with external supplements, with manufactured supplements. No, but the traditional diet of a sailor, for example, was supplemented with citrus fruits to stop him dying of scurvy on the trip. So that's adding in a food to overcome the deficiency. So whether we add in a food or add in something that's not part of our typical personal diet to overcome the deficiencies, that's supplementation, in my opinion. So once upon a time, if we look at the work of Weston Price, people supplemented the typical diet with bone broth, with taking liver twice a week, with fermented foods. They were either part of the traditional diet or they would supplement them. Dr. Kate Shanahan, author of Deep Nutrition, widely recognized, wrote about this issue of what Weston Price found about, that when a young couple was getting married, it was assumed that they would then be having children. So all of the community's focus went into supplementing all of the healthiest foods for the couple so that they would pass on the best genetic potential to their newborn. So they may have not been man-made supplements, they were food supplements, okay? So sure, you don't need supplements if you intend to no longer get stressed and deplete your B vitamins, to no longer have periods of poor sleep, to no longer drink any alcohol or caffeinated drinks that might deplete you of minerals, to no longer eat any grains or processed foods. If you intend to no longer be exposed to chemicals, you intend to no longer live in a home made from manufactured man-made materials, if you intend to no longer get exposed to any radiation, if you intend to throw out your computer, your mobile phone, your laptop, your TV, so that you're no longer exposed to blue light or work in an artificially lit environment, if you intend to no longer have air conditioning, if you intend to no longer take any medication, if you don't intend to drive a car, if you don't intend to fill up your own fuel tank, if you want to be able to sleep, if you're able to just sleep as soon as you're tired and wake up when you feel refreshed and not work by any time, external time, sure. If you're willing to move out of the city, stop using any technology, buy a pristine property and live off the land, and practice sustainable agriculture. If you intend to get plenty of sun, eat liver, eat organ meats a few times a week, as found by Weston Price. If you intend to consume bone broth and fermented foods most days of your life that you made, not that you bought in a package. If you intend to only eat fresh, local, in-season organic foods that you probably produced, then you can probably give up supplements. But if you're, in reality, if we go through this list, all of these things, there's so many things that deplete us of nutrients, and there's so many things that put a demand on our body for extra nutrients, that it makes logical sense as a convenience in our daily modern life to just use some supplements. But we still assert here in the Savvy team that you should focus on a healthy diet as the basis. That's why we have the Eat Savvy approach. It's why it's free. We don't sell books and CD programs and all this sort of thing on that. It's the basis that we build from. So if experts say to you you don't need supplements, I just think that they're either behind the times or biased in some way. So because it's not logical. If we look to the food standards, there are, here's the thing that's interesting. So if we don't need to supplement, why are we actually in a situation where our food is supplement? I'm just looking here for the food standards document. I'm going to actually look at, because you realize that they have fortified food throughout history. So hang on. So experts say that we don't need to supplement, but what they do is they take over and force supplementation in processed foods. Is that because they recognize that if we eat that food, we're going to develop a deficiency, so they fortify it? Exactly. So there are foods that are by law required to be fortified. And I'm just looking up the Australian statistics, the Australian documentation right now. So what I'm talking about here is that, all right, this is where we're being led astray. Many experts say you don't need to supplement, and yet the food itself is supplemented. Just looking for food standards here. So, mandatory fortification here, foodstandards.gov.au. Mandatory fortification is required when their vitamin minerals in specified foods can be low. There are, where are we? What are some of the things that are? There are voluntary fortification that's there, and then there are mandatory fortification. For example, they must fortify margarine with vitamin D. Well, that's interesting. Do they recognize that if you switch from butter to margarine, you're suddenly going to be lacking in vitamin D? Yes. So they fortified. So when we look at the food standards and we look at the fortification of foods, what the experts are saying is that we don't need to supplement, but we've got to supplement these deficient foods. Well, that still sounds like supplementation to me. It really still sounds like supplementation. So it doesn't make any logical sense to say that we don't need supplements if we then go and supplement the food. Now, it was well documented back in the 30s with the Senate document being reported in the USA that 99% of people are deficient in minerals, and that a marked deficiency in any one of the more important minerals actually results in disease. So we're seeing foods fortified with vitamins and minerals when it's known that deficiencies can develop. And great. But any person who says all you need is a balanced diet, any expert, any doctor that tells you all you need is a balanced diet, when government statistics show that 9 in 10 adults aged 19 and over do not eat the recommended number of vegetables. How can that be a sensible approach to say you don't need supplements when 9 in 10, most people do not get enough vegetables for the needed micronutrients? Supplementation makes logical sense, I assert, until you and during the time of you correcting your diet. There have been a number of different nutrition disease links that I'm not going to go into, but when you supplement your diet, these go away. That's been our experience. Okay, so there's no point in being deficient and having all these warning lights from symptoms going off on, like any symptoms are like warning lights for your body. And so we don't have warning lights like a car would have that we're low in something, but unless of course you have one of our bioinfluence report hair tests. But anyway, we don't have these same warning lights, but what happens is we end up with symptoms. So it's better to make sure that the engine oil and the brake fluid and the water is topped up in the car rather than waiting for the warning light to go on. Just like it's better to make sure that all of the nutrients are topped up in us rather than waiting for the warning lights. Speaking about warning lights though, Dr. Molly Roberts says your body will start by whispering, then it'll start talking. And if you don't pay attention, it'll start yelling and shouting, but then you have an illness. That's when the warning light is like an alarm going off in the car. So that's why we've put together things such as the Are You Running on Empty web classes to really go through some of these micronutrient deficiencies and what it means and what you can do to correct them. So here in the Savvy Team, we like to say that wellness, it could be as easy as 1, 2, 3. And that's to decrease your toxin exposure from all sources, to increase your nutrition, and then to optimize your body's natural detox pathways, and the systems of the body. And so the way that we like to refer to that is like if you think of the systems of the body like the branches of a tree, we've obviously got to make sure that all of the nutrients and all of the nourishment is there for the tree, and then the branches will do just fine. Whereas if we just try to treat the branch without treating the tree with all of the micronutrients and the things that it needs, then it's not going to do very well. And yet modern medicine is about treating each of the branches separately without really thinking about the whole. So if we're looking to supply the body with all the nutrients and you're looking for a plan, then the Savvy 90 plan is our core nutrient plan that looks to supply the body with all of the needed nutrients. And so we also have a basics plan and an ultimate plan depending on your budgetary constraints. So certainly reach out to us and ask about that. And if you want more information on the minerals in particular, we do have a minerals CD, like it used to be a CD, but we're putting together it on an MP3. We can send that to you via Facebook. If you just want to message us or email us, we can get that to you. So for your best wellness journey, when you really think about it, you're going to need a plan. You'll want some specific solutions. You'll benefit from having guidance along the way, and tapping in with the community also just makes the journey a little bit easier and more fun. And that's what we offer you here in the Savvy team. So reach out to us and request an invitation, and we can get you started on the whole journey. And if you visited the site and just went to savvy-team.com/join in and requested an invitation there, you'll then be encouraged to fill out the how can we help form. And that helps us to know exactly what you're looking to achieve, and that way we can point you in the right direction. But we're here to help, so if there's something that you want to improve about your own personal health and lifestyle, then we can certainly guide you there. So I just want to take a little bit of a look at what's going on in any comments or questions that have been there. Not at present. So there was one other thing that I wanted to chat with you about there. Yeah, one thing that I wanted to mention here regarding, again, thinking about supplements and being not just a convenience, that my first experience with this was working, in the early 90s and late 90s with my mentor in the health and healing field, my original first mentor, where I worked really somewhat like an apprenticeship for a few years, really learning all sorts of different health and healing methodologies. But one of the things that he witnessed from working right back into the 60s and 50s even, that he used to recommend for people to get regeneration. Like, this is not just getting balance and everything, but to actually heal, to help people, encourage people to actually heal their body and reach that higher level of wellness that we're talking about here. Initially, a raw diet, like a really healthy raw diet, getting off the packaged foods, was enough. He found that was enough for most people to regenerate, not just reach balance, but to regenerate. And then he started to realize that they need to get the same results. The first nutrient that needed to be put in was a trace mineral supplement. He found that even with a good diet, people didn't get the same regeneration without added trace minerals. So that became the cornerstone of his wellness program. Then he started to realize that people were deficient in enough enzymes, and that just the raw food wasn't enough to help them cleanse and regenerate. So he added in enzymes, extra exogenous digestive enzymes and things like that, and lymphatic enzymes, things to clean out the system. And then after a while, that wasn't quite enough for true regeneration. So he started adding in essential fatty acids as a supplement. So just the enzymes to help digest the food and clean up the system wasn't enough. The minerals wasn't enough. Had to add in some essential fatty acids to get the same regenerative speed for most people. Then he started to recognize that B vitamins appeared to be lacking in people. So, where they used to just recommend nutritional yeasts and everything, he had to use high-potency B vitamin supplements for regeneration, not just for balance, but to really get people to regenerate. Then he started to find that people needed the green superfoods and started to recommend spirulina and chlorella and everything, and especially for those people who were vegetarian because they weren't getting all of the amino acids there. So we're coming back to those essential amino acids there. And even and so that needed to be part of the supplement regime. And then he started to notice that people had their bugs were out in terms of their gut. So probiotic supplementation became important. And so over the years, what he recognized, to get the same speed, to get the same level of healing for people, he needed to keep adding more and more things. And he asserted that it was just the change in our modern diet, just the change in the farming techniques, and the fact that the onslaught of all the chemicals just meant that we needed to work harder to tip the balance in favor of health and healing. And that's what we found here in the Savvy team. Our continued research and practice with people and working with many community members has really uncovered that to be factual. So yes, if you intend to live a perfect life in a pristine environment, you'll probably be fine without supplementation. But otherwise, it just simply makes logical sense, especially when we're no longer eating all of the nasty bits that our forefathers used to use. And we still encourage that. Include some liver in your diet, include bone broth, include organ meats, nose to tail nutrition, they call that in that particular arena of using all bits of the animal. Fish, what do? We eat the fillets of fish and throw away the heads and the bones and all that sort of thing. Whereas in cultures gone by, they would save all of that and create a fish broth. Very, very healing for the body. So buy whole fish, or if you're a fisherman, don't throw away the heads and the actual skeleton. Turn it into a bone broth. Yeah, I get it. Look, fish has a very interesting aroma in the house. So, but it's very, very good for you. And this is the thing. These are some of the things that we're missing nowadays. But again, since we're missing that, that's why here in the Savvy team we have access to highly bio-optimized collagen supplements to really help to because we haven't consumed bone broths for decades and decades. We need faster results than bone broths will provide. That's why we help you with bio-optimized collagen and hyaluronic acid supplements, for example, because whilst bone broth will help, it won't help now. Whereas these things have been proven to have fast efficacy. So that's why we still believe in using the best of science and nature to optimize our well-being in the now. So I hope you found that information about what the experts can agree upon valuable. And if you have any questions, then definitely do reach out to us. We'll be glad to help. But I'll also be delving into a little bit more information on this topic in our Healthy, Wealthy, Wise private Facebook group. So you might want to request an invitation there so we can continue this conversation. All right. So look, it must be time for us to move on into the wealthy and wise part of the show. And so we're actually going to be dealing with, in this particular part of the show, we're going to be dealing with the questions that go on in your head. So let's take a look at that. Questions, change your questions, change your life. So if you just think about it, what's been going on in your head? You've probably been asking yourself questions, even as we've been going on in the earlier parts of the show. So do I believe on that? Do I believe in that? What do I do? I wonder what my grandmother did. Is that correct? All of the things that were going on in your head were actually questions. Our mind is programmed to constantly ask questions. Now, they can be power questions or they can be negative questions. I've heard this referred to as asking silk questions versus polyester questions, if we use the clothing analogy. Silk is quality. Polyester is not so good, not so comfortable. So, what sort of questions do you ask yourself? And are they powerful, uplifting questions? So you just think about it. Chances are, if you're really honest with yourself, there's questioning going on in your mind all the time. Everything that I've said so far, you're saying, do I believe that? I wonder whether that's true. Is that really true? I'm not sure about that. Haven't I seen information that debunks that? And so you're programmed to constantly be asking questions. And the way our mind works is that we are like a cybernetic, as Maxwell Maltz articulated in his book Psychocybernetic. We are like this psycho-cybernetic brain. We're always looking, we're seeking out the answer, or we're seeking out the way forward to achieve our goals. So we are like this seeking mechanism. And what happens is our brain naturally goes to the questioning. The problem, as we dealt with when we looked at in a previous episode of the show, we talked about Shad Helmstedter's work in self-talk, and how we've become, when we first get going in our lives, we become programmed to be somewhat negative, and our questioning becomes negative, and our self-talk becomes negative. And often, if you really slow down, our self-talk becomes negative questioning too. Why do I always do this? Why am I such a loser? Why do things always turn out so negatively? Why can't I seem to get ahead? So we ask these negative questioning things as part of our negative programming and self-esteem. Part of that is, as Shad Helmstetter, blend the names together. As Helmstetter puts forward, this has just been the natural programming. We've been beaten down in our upbringing. And this is because, when you think about it, you were probably brought up to say, don't be so conceited. Don't be so full of yourself. And we're sort of trained not to self-promote, which is, in marketing maybe a good thing, but that means that's become over our years being negative and self-deprecating, really, putting ourselves down rather than thinking good of ourselves and looking for ways to elevate our self-esteem. So there's negative questioning. These questions have become slanted towards negative, towards putting ourselves down. So what we have to do in taking self-responsibility is start to ask the silk questions. Start to ask the power questions. So there's a few ways that you can tackle this. So, for example, if you find yourself doing something, if you catch yourself out doing something that was an error, like, for example, you drop something and it smashes all over the floor, what would you say to yourself there? You'd probably maybe swear under your breath and say, why am I such a clumsy idiot, for example? Well, that's unnecessary. That's a question that you're asking yourself, and your brain, being that cybernetic organism, yourself like seeking out the answer, and here's the question you're saying, why am I such a clumsy idiot? Not powerful in leading you towards the life that you want. So we have to change. If you want to change your life, we have to change your questions. And so one example of that, like let's just take it away from dropping something and move towards just playing a game of tennis, for example. Like, let's say you missed a backhand shot, and instead of saying, why am I so unco? You could start by saying, oops, that's not like me. I usually hit clear and perfect shots. And then you can visualize yourself doing that and going, yep, that's like me. So we're using multiple different techniques here. And so you could say, whoops, how can I be better at that next time? How can I be better at that next time? Just asking yourself a positive question. How can I improve? What do I need to do to improve my backhand swing? That's powerful as well. So changing your questioning, changing your self-talk, changing the way you talk to yourself can make all the difference. So this then leads us to, how do we trick our brain into really, or how do we get our brain working for us, first of all? So let's say even just sitting down and brainstorming, like one question to ask yourself. I remember reading this story of a hardware store owner that just said once a week he would sit himself down and ask the question. He had a failing hardware store, and he asked the question, what can I do to improve what's going on in my business? And then he'd just jot down any ideas. And then he'd ask him, how can I get these done as quickly as possible? Positive questioning. And then he'd see what he could do, get it done in the week, work as much as possible to implement those ideas, sit down again. How can I improve what's going on in my business? How can I get this done this week? So all positive questioning, rather than the negative questioning would be sitting down going, why is my store failing? Why can't I seem to get this ahead? Why is nothing working out for me? And when you think, if you just repeat, that doesn't feel good, right? It's not helping. Change your questions, change your life. So just asking, how can I? Robert Kiyosaki says, for example, his rich dad taught him. So financial guru Robert Kiyosaki, author of a number of different books, he said his rich dad taught him, never say I can't afford it. Ask yourself, how could I afford it? How could I afford it? And so he was going to buy himself a Porsche at one stage in his life. And he sort of, in came his thoughts about, it's the wrong thing to do. It's like spending money on frivolous things. And then he said, hang on, positive questioning here. How can I do this? How can I purchase this in the most effective, tax effective, and best use of money? So what he did is he took the money that he was going to use to purchase the Porsche, he had cash there, and he invested in a storage facility, used that as the down payment for a storage facility that then gave him enough cash flow that he could lease the Porsche in a tax-effective manner. So by using the positive questioning, he found a way around that. How can I? How can I improve my health? How can I change what's going on in my life? How can I improve my business? How can I improve my financial situation? What can I do to make a difference in my world this week? Change your questions, change your life. Now, we can take that to an entirely different level and actually trick the brain if we use the some of the methodology that I talked about Shad Helmstetter and this programming here, but Noah St. John, who wrote this little book a while ago, the great little book of affirmations, and he coined this term affirmation, which is basically like a power question, but it's tricking the brain by asking presupposed questions in a way, changing the questioning from not how can I improve what's going on in my business, to realizing that since the brain is always asking questions and we're programmed negatively to go, why is my business not working? Instead of we could change the question to why is my business not working to how can I improve what's going on in my business? And that could make a huge difference. But he asserts that we can then take it to the next level and go, why is everything going so well in my business nowadays? Why is everything turning out so well for me in my life? Why do I have all of the right customers beating down my door and looking to do business with me? Why do I have so many people turning up looking to work with me in my business? Why do I have so many positive people in my life? Why are things just seemingly going ahead so easily for me? Why is life so good? Why do I find things so easy to do nowadays? So take it to the next level by presupposing it's done, because that's really what affirmations are about, presupposing it's done. But since our mind operates by questions and looks for the answers, you're actually sort of a little bit of a mind twist, pattern interrupt, by actually stating it as a question. A worthwhile little trick for you to do, and it does seem to seep into the subconscious differently than affirming that. But really, I do believe that it's still, as Shad Helmstetter says, we're supplanting the negative questioning with positive questioning. Just like if with affirmations and positive self-talk, we're basically supplanting the old with the new, because it's very difficult to deactivate negative self-talk. we have to simply come back in with positive self-talk instead. So you can't just, like, we call that the about face procedure in our personal development seminars. Like, when we're fixated on what we don't want, if we can't get our eyes off what we don't want, the only way to change that is to do an about face and put our eyes and focus on what we do want. And when we're focused on what we do want, we'll naturally be avoiding the focus on what we don't want. It's the same thing with that question. If we're constantly asking positive, uplifting, silk questions, doing affirmations and power questions, then we won't have the negative self-talk questions. So the why am I such a loser becomes why am I such a winner? Why are things turning out for me so well? What's happening? Why are things so good for me right now? And the brain goes through that little bit of a pattern interrupt going, really? Things are good? Oh, okay. Attracting the things that are good. And because it's really, when it comes down to it, when we understand the law of attraction, it's really a change in your vibration. We are transmitting stations for the power of thought. So when you're putting out good thoughts, whether they be self-talk or affirmations or questions, when we're putting out the good vibes, the good things come back to us. So there's some tips there on how you can change your questions and change your life. Give it a go. Tell us how you think. We would love to hear your insights and inspiration. So definitely let us know if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube or on the audio version of the podcast. Let us know how you went, whether there were certain inspirations, insights, things that you learned. And if you're having a success story with all of that, then definitely let us know as well. So how can we help? What would you be looking for? Are you looking for greater health and vitality? What about more money and lifestyle? All of the topics that we go through in the show and what we do here in the Savvy Team can certainly help you to achieve those. So I'd like to leave you with the thought here as we're changing our life and we're changing our thinking and we're changing our health and we're following these tactics and really making differences in our life. Leave you with a little bit of a thought from Dr. Seuss. And here it goes. Really good one here. You might want to remember this one. Oh, the places you'll go, today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. So for your best wellness journey, if you're going to get on your way and your mountain is waiting, you're going to want a plan, you're going to want some solutions, you're going to want guidance, and you'll want to tap in with a supportive community. And that's what we offer you here in the Savvy Team. So request an invitation. And look, thanks for joining the show. It's great to have you with us. And we look forward to connecting again in future episodes or within the wellness community if you're now part of the wellness community. So all the best. Until next time, it's Corey Sievers here, encouraging you to be savvy.